Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. We're back briefly just for a special one-off, although we may do some more special one-offs in the future. My name's Steve. My co-host is Pete.
Hello.
Hello. Today we are talking about Beverly Hills Cop Axel F from 2024. This is the fourth.
Yes, the fourth movie. Sorry.
The fourth
The
Beverly Hills
fourth.
Cop film
Of course,
starring
yes.
Eddie Murphy. The first one was like 40 years ago at this point or something.
It was they mentioned it in the film. Well, they don't mention the film was from 40 years ago, but they mentioned he first came to Beverly Hills 40 years ago. But yeah, December the 5th, 1984, the first film came out. The second one came out in 1987, and the
Okay.
third one was in 1994. And what I hadn't realized until looking on IMDb for this, because now I would know who directed and wrote films. As a
Yes,
child, I knew who starred in films,
that was
and
it.
mainly that was it.
Mm.
So they've never had the same director twice. For some reason, in my mind, John Landis did all of them. He didn't. He did the third one, which is the weakest by a long stretch. He
Yep.
said he didn't want to do it. He turned it down and then did it for the money and deliberately made it not very good, apparently. Um,
Allegedly. Allegedly, Pete.
allegedly. But
Allegedly.
that one was written by Stephen E. D'Souza, who wrote Die Hard.
Mm-hmm.
So that should have been good on paper.
On paper,
But
but
yeah,
in
on
direction,
paper, not
obviously,
not yeah.
and the editing room. But this one,
So yeah,
tell us who directed this amazing
this was
new film.
directed by, I mean, stand by your beds, everyone. This is a name that's really going to knock you for six. It's Mark Malloy. Now, Mark Malloy has directed commercials or short films, should I say, for Apple, Nissan, and Johnny Walker. This is his first, from what I can see, narrative thing. I have directed as much narrative content as he has. So it's a little bit unfair, totally overlooked. I've seen all the other films. I've,
You know the characters, you can do the quotes, you can
exactly,
do the
exactly,
music, as we've proven already.
exactly. And so I don't
Go
really
ahead
know
of the
where my
game. You should be there for Axel F Part 2
why
coming
phone
up.
call was missing. But yeah, he's
Um,
and that and lots of other people have been attached to this before. I think the guys who've done the two new Bad Boys movies were originally supposed to do this film.
Alil
Um,
and Bilal, can't remember
mhm.
the surname. Yeah, the brothers.
And then before that,
I
someone
don't
else was
know.
attached, and before that, and then in between, they made a Brett Ratner. That was it supposed to do originally was Brett Ratner
Right.
in the early or mid 2000s,
Mid
I think.
2000s, probably. Yeah.
And then it's moved around about four different directors. Then they did a TV pilot. I think
Yes.
it was going to be his son.
I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah,
It never
yeah,
got
and that
released,
didn't
did
go
it?
anywhere. That was in 2013. That didn't
Yeah.
go anywhere. And then I think Paramount basically, according to my notes here, gave the license. I'm sure there was money exchanged to Netflix. Said, "Oh,
Mhm.
you do something with it because the pilot hasn't gone anywhere." I think it was a pilot for CBS, so the pilot hasn't gone anywhere. Why don't you buy the old back catalogue of us, have the old movies, and make a new one? And then they did,
Mhm.
and directed by a man that's never done anything before apart from commercials. Having said that, Tony Scott did the second Beverly Hills Cop, and he obviously came from a sort of commercials background too.
Yep.
I think he'd made a few films in between.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so
So, do you want to know who the
Scott,
writer is on this? One of them, at least.
go on.
Will Beale, who isn't a name I know, but then I looked down some of his credits. So he started off on Castle a few years ago. Since then, he's done Gangster Squad. He's done worked on the Training Day TV series.
No.
He did the screenplays for Aquaman, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Bad Boys Ride or Die, and then
Bad
and
Boy,
then Beverly Hills Cop Axel F.
that's interesting. Now I wonder because there's two other writers credited as well. If he did the first, because it's always very difficult to tell who actually wrote a script these days because you get
Yeah.
multiple people. If over a certain percentage of your first draft is kept, you maintain your credit, and other writers come on, and you can't always tell. I'm thinking purely on the basis that he wrote Bad Boys
Bad
Ride or
Boys.
Die, which is the directors that were originally attached to this, that maybe it
Hmm.
was his was the first pass, and then the rewrites were done by Tom Gormican and Kevin Efton, who together wrote The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, the Nicolas Cage and
Have you watched that?
I have watched that. I have.
I got an think either 45 minutes or 50 minutes in, and I had to stop because I
Right.
realized I was expecting it to be a comedy or just amusing. And I found I was just kind of, I had the look like I was basically constipated throughout the whole of the first bit that I'd watched, waiting for something. And I just cringing the whole time. So yeah, I stopped and haven't carried on since.
I think, Stephen, I did a 5 minute review of it for this channel, so I have to go
I
back and
perhaps
listen to
should have
myself.
listened to that first
Maybe, yeah.
before
Thank you for your, yeah,
I watched it.
yeah.
I
But
should have done that.
the only thing with that film is I thought it worked really well, but some of the characters, they were in different films. A lot of the policewoman in it seemed like she was in like a typical kind of full on comedy.
Spy drama or something.
Yeah,
And
and Nicolas Cage is just in the Cage verse,
yeah,
um,
Pedro
as
Pascal
was
was in.
Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just like, what is
just
going on?
they were kind of making their own film in spite of everyone around them. That's how it felt to me.
Hmm. It's very strange. But anyway, yes, I think you're right. I think the multiple writers suggests that perhaps Tom was working on this one first, and then sorry, Will Beale was working on it first, and then Tom and Kevin came on afterwards and did further revisions, but they've all maintained a writing credit. So the cast reunited. We have
Yeah, kind of.
Eddie Murphy, Judge Reinhold, and John
Yes,
Ashton. Oh,
Ashton.
and Paul Reiser, of
Yes, and
course.
John Ashton and Paul Reiser were not in the third movie,
No,
which I didn't remember because Hector Elizondo kind of replaced John Ashton because John
do you
Ashton had
remember?
retired 30 years ago. John Ashton's character retired
Yes,
in the
yes.
story and then came back in this one
Mhm,
for a little bit. And
mhm.
of course, Brinson Pinchot is back as Serge,
Serge,
who
yes,
was not in the second film, but it was in the first and the
first.
third, and
Yeah.
now the fourth. So I was expecting, I don't know about you, I was expecting the three of them to be doing everything together. It to
Yes.
be him and the two of them. Now I saw the trailer and I knew Joseph Gordon-Levitt was in it, but I thought, wow, they've just done that to kind of go, here's a big stunt because it was a weird trailer or weird scene that they released. It was
Yeah.
like, here's a big stunt, everyone. Um, but it's kind of different because you've got Taylor Page in it as well. The only thing I can see that she's been in of note is the Toxic Avenger remake, and she plays his daughter.
Right. Yeah.
And then sticking out like a sore thumb because he's far too recognizable was Kevin Bacon.
That's Kevin
For me,
Bacon.
oh, it's Kevin Bacon. Oh, cool. I don't want to buy an EE phone, but thanks for coming.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin Bacon. Yeah. How did you feel about them bringing it back after all this time?
At first, I was like, it's going to be rubbish. It's going to be rubbish. That typical kind of fan reaction. You can't do it. You can't, you can't do what you did before. It's not like the old days. And then once I watched, I think to be honest with you, Bad Boys and Top Gun have kind of softened me to bringing things back because I'm one of the people who really like the third Bad Boys, and I absolutely adored the fourth Bad Boys movie. And I thought they were in the spirit of the older films, but they brought a little bit of a modern angle to them as well.
Hmm.
Top Gun Maverick, I also really liked,
It was
but that
amazing.
felt very similar to the first film, but with more, different technology. But it
Yep.
didn't really change. Didn't feel like it. They didn't, and they've done the same here. They haven't tried to Fast and Furious it. The
Mm.
third Bad Boys, they tried to Fast and Furious it a little bit, but then they
Mhm.
reined it in for the fourth one, I believe. It felt like it to me. What I really liked about this is it felt like it's almost like you've gone and uncovered an old 80s film and you kind of found it in the cupboard, dusted it off, and put the old VHS in, maybe even a Betamax in the thing, maybe with a remote control with a wire on it still. And you pressed play and you sat down with some cheap Spar popcorn, um,
Very
and some
specific there.
and some Corona and the old pop, not the, the not COVID.
Yeah.
And it just they've made an 80s film now
Mm.
with the old cat to me because like it starts with like you know driving along and looking at the people on either side of the street, just things that you forget they don't do in films anymore
Yeah.
that happen here. And it's quite a small story, which a modern film by the end of it they'd be saving the America or the
The
planet
planet from an
or
asteroid.
some, yeah. But here they're just sorting some stuff out in a particular area of LA.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. This is it. It's
What about you? What did you think before it was came out.
I remember them talking about the pilot for the TV show, and I thought, yeah, because originally it was going to be a film, and then it was like, oh, it's going to be now going to be a TV show and a pilot, and I thought, yeah, could still work. Fish out of water, and his sons now the kind of because they've redone the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and they've brought it back, but they've made it a really gritty drama, serious kind of dark thing, and I thought, if they bring it back as a TV show with his son as a cop, it won't have Eddie in the lead. Therefore, all the jokes will come from him, but they'll be secondary. So it won't be funny action comedy like we've had. And I thought, oh, I'm not sure. And then that went away and didn't appear. And then when they talked about this, I thought, the budget's not going to be there for a Netflix film, for one. It just won't look very good. And then I thought, do we really want to see them creaking around in their 60s now and 70s?
Yeah, and I think that was the clever thing they did, because, not being rude, like, Eddie Murphy looks older than he did, but he doesn't look that much older than he did.
No.
The other two look like they've been basically brought back to life for this film. They've been reanimated. Judge Reinhold, he's had a difficult. I don't know what he's been up to. Don't know him personally, but I think he's had a very difficult paper round, or something has happened, because he looks twice the age of
The
Eddie
man's
Murphy.
probably 60 at this point.
But no, his face looked like it needed ironing. He's so I think making his character kind of in the place that he is, where he's kind of gone off the rails and a little bit kind of abstract, kind of worked. And I think I was a bit like, oh, this is you've tricked me. You've made me watch a film about this man, and he's with different people. And it's
He's
like,
67. Judge
Oh,
Reinhold is
that's fine.
67.
But how old is Eddie Murphy?
Okay, hang on. To the Google machine, everyone. Let's see how fast someone can Google this. 63.
See, but he looks more like 40 years younger than him, not 4.
Yeah, and John Ashton is the eldest.
He's got to be 100. He's got to be 100.
He's 76.
Oh, when he retired 30 years ago, then he was 46.
Do you know what's really scary? I think we've already talked about this. How old was Danny Glover in the first Lethal Weapon?
Quite a lot younger than I am. I know that much.
He was either 42 or 44.
Yeah.
And at that point, he was too old for this shit.
Yeah.
In his early 40s. Now he's actually in his 70s. He's actually too old. Paul Reiser, let's not forget him. Paul Reiser is 68. So
he looked better than Judge. Sorry, Judge Ronald, if you're listening, I apologize. But he looks.
Judge regularly listens to a podcast.
He also looks better.
He's a big fan.
That's why he looks so tired. He's been basically trying to catch up on all the episodes because he knew we were coming back.
Yeah. But we appreciate the support, Judge. But have a break, man. Have a rest. You've earned it.
But
yeah.
I guess it being Axel with different people is fine, because at the end of the day, this is called. I mean, it was originally just called Axel F, and then they changed it to Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, in case anyone didn't know who Axel F was.
They'll think it was the song, and then they'll be like, "Why don't I watch something from the '80s?" And you're like, "Oh."
Yeah.
But anyway, I was expecting it to be a disaster. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't think the budget would be there, and I was pleasantly surprised. There were some age restrictions, and I think bringing in some of the younger cast worked. I think having Joseph Gordon-Levitt there as the boyfriend / younger cop works in the kind of Billy role, sort of. Having him there was necessary, I think, because he can do stuff that they can't.
It's a mirror for Axel himself as well, isn't it? It's the age. It's a cliche. It's a trope that the daughter falls in love with someone who's like her father, but that's kind of what's happened. And the guy that she's with is very much like Axel, which is why they rub each other up the wrong way. And then over time, he realizes that he's the same person taking the same level of risks. I thought some of that was quite good. Their kind of bonding was good. The relationship with him and his daughter, I thought, was really well handled. Because I know a lot of these films. Yeah, I think, a lot of these films, people go, oh, Bill and Ted are coming back. Why have they got children? Axel F's coming back. Why has he got a child? You know why? Because 30 or 40 years have passed. And when the film, they don't just pack their life away in a little box ready for when you want to watch another film. If these were real people, they would be older and things would have happened to them.
Well, it's true though. Like when I watched a new Bill and Ted and I saw Keanu without facial hair for the first time in probably 25 years, I thought, whoa. No pun intended.
Dude!
Yeah, no pun intended. I looked at it and went, yeah, no wonder he has a beard. His face needs ironing. But equally, it has been 30 years since the first Bill and Ted or the second one. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. But he looks a lot better with a beard. I'm just saying. He does. I get it. You can't have him stand still. Nothing stands. They could have deep faked it, but nah, I'd rather they didn't, you know?
I think it's weird. Like the purist in me doesn't want any of these films to exist because I want to watch new stuff. But the old nostalgic person who wishes they were still 10, um, what like well, just to put in context, so this film came out in 1984.
Yep,
So in reality, in the UK, it probably came out in 1985. By the time it was on video, it was probably the end of 1985. So a year later than in the States, I thought, because I wouldn't
yep,
have been able to go to see the cinema. I was too young, so I was 10, maybe 11,
yep.
watching it at home on VHS. And I remember thinking, this is the coolest person I have ever seen in my life.
There was
The
something.
character and Eddie Murphy, something about him was just. And then I watched Raw, much too young. I watched
Hmm.
Delirious, much too young.
Hmm.
Everyone in school was. I was obsessed with Eddie Murphy from the age of 10 to about the age of 14, 15. And I read his biography, unauthorized and stuff. And watched all of other films, not of varying levels of quality, and
Yeah,
then kind of he reinvented himself as like a family comedy actor. And he did
Did
for a sweet
Doolittle and
spot
Come
of
to
like,
America and
yeah, well, coming to America is a genius film. But
mm.
there's about a 5, maybe 7 year period where he was probably the most interesting actor, comedy actor at least on the planet.
Maybe, maybe, yeah. But I remember like you watching this one very young, the first film, and there was like a almost like a grimy quality to it. Like it wasn't seedy, but it felt something in the 80s, or just some of the films made then had this kind of really dirty feel to them, where you did see rubbish in the streets and the way they were shot and the lighting and all that kind of thing. And then but they did it really well because you saw him when he was at home, and then he comes to LA and he goes to Beverly Hills, and everything's bright and sunny and light and clean and beautiful colors. And they had a great mirror for that again when he came and he got in the car, and like you said, he's driving along and he looks across. But we see the updated versions. Back then,
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
like kids on skateboards and people walking poodles, and now with leg warmers on. Now it's what we've got today, and he sees it all and he's just like, what? And when the police women arrest him and he's like, I'd rather I'm not surprised you're embarrassed to be seeing this Lego car. It's just so shameful. It's true, it's just how things have changed.
yeah.
um that was, yeah, it
But
moved things on and it moved the character on. I think they had to, given the amount of
I
time
think
that's passed.
you mentioned the kind of griminess of the original. I think in some ways that was my gateway drug into action movies
Right.
because I wasn't very old and it was like, oh, it's a bit scary, it's a bit dark, but oh, it's funny. It's really funny. Oh, there's a
Mm.
banana in the exhaust pipe. Um, and it was very funny. And so then I went, oh, what? And then you kind of tonally, a few years later, you're watching Lethal Weapon, and then suddenly, do you know what I mean? It's almost like that. And then suddenly you're watching action films that have no comedy in them. And I think it was a little bit of a gateway drug as a 10-year-old to, oh,
Yeah.
this is cool. This is America. This is really cool.
Well, we at that time we were never going to get there. It was the other side of the world. It was something that was so, you know, radically different and beyond anything we'd ever seen. So it was a window into a world that we were never seen on TV and in films, and this was it. So just showed two very different sides of America, the rich, glamorous side of Los Angeles versus other parts and other cities. Yeah, it's fascinating. So, what do you think about the story of the new one?
It worked at times and not at others. So it did something that used to happen a lot and doesn't happen anymore, really. It's a bit of a Bondism of I know you're the villain. You know I know you're the villain, but just wait. I haven't got any evidence, but you wait at some point. And I think I found Kevin Bacon's character, the sort of dodgy cop, a few things. It was blatantly obvious it was him from the second he walked on screen.
Yeah,
And then you got the whole look at his expensive shoes, look at his
to
expensive watch.
watch.
And then you go, well, why doesn't his old partner, why doesn't John Ashton's character, why isn't he worked it out? Because he's so old. He can't think straight. I don't know. And it just became like, and he's hired these goons that are everywhere. Which what I loved about that, they hired 80s goons. They didn't look like they were from a modern film. They
No,
literally looked like it could have been like what's his name, Bron James. It felt like it could have been Matthias Hughes, or
Well, one of them is Mark
Sven.
Pellegrino, who's been in like Supernatural
Ah,
for
okay.
years and years and years, and a bunch of other shows. He was
Of
the
course it
one
was.
of the smaller guy of the three very large men that
I
were
mean,
there.
Sven Ole Thorsen, where was
Could
your
have He
invitation?
could have been
He
there
could have fitted in, but
blatantly. Pat
but it
Roach
had that like big guys with ponytail kind of, and the
and
Rambo stuff
mullets. Yeah,
was kind of it. I thought it was quite clever.
the
The
Rambo knife. Yeah,
It
that was
wasn't the
brilliant.
people you thought he'd have had working for him, but yes, my biggest problem was it was a bit like everything's out in the open. I thought the relationship stuff, it got a little bit bogged down in the middle. It got a little bit, okay, we're kind of waiting for something to happen. You're moving all the pieces together, and
Hmm.
also everyone forgot about Judge
Billy.
Reinhold
Yeah.
for about 40 minutes. Like, he got kidnapped at the start of the film, and everyone,
Yeah,
oh,
and I
where
was
is
like,
he?
oh, they're going to spring him out really
Yeah, yeah,
quick.
yeah,
And then,
yeah.
like,
They're like,
we'll get to that.
where,
We'll get to that.
you're like, oh, where is he? Let's go and check his office. Oh, he's not there. Oh well, I'm sure he'll turn up. Never mind.
Yeah,
And
like,
at
he's
the
been
end, he's like,
kidnapped.
and then they go, oh, we just waited to come and get you. It's like like in an hour or 2 hour long film, you waited an hour and a half basically before you thought you went, and you only went and got him because it was convenient for something else. It was a little bit odd that.
Yeah, that was like the whole thing where you said you expected the three of them to be together because you saw them in the car on the trailer and you're thinking, oh, brilliant, the three of them coming together. And then it's like, no, uh, one of them doesn't come out of his office. Taggart doesn't really come out of his office. He just sort of stays there. Billy's locked up in a chair and then he helps out a little bit at the end for the action scenes. And it was like, okay, so I get the idea of passing the torch and that kind of thing, and it can work. But equally, having them in the film and them not given too much to do just felt a bit
They were very
weird.
passive. Like, I mean, in some ways, like some of the clues were through
Billy.
Billy,
Yeah.
but not. But there were such big gaps between them. Like an hour later, oh, another clue. It's like, well, it was an hour ago, and you spent the last 40 minutes trying to work out if your daughter still likes you or she's speaking to you or not. And it
Yeah.
got a little bit bogged down in that. I think that there's another edit almost of this that could have been a little bit pacier.
Mm.
But these are, for me, these are quite minor things. I think that just the tone and the feel, it felt like a Beverly Hills Cop movie. I think on
Yes.
every level. They toned down Serge, which I think in 2024 is probably a good thing. Um,
I don't know what you mean.
some of the humor was maybe a little bit, but then it was quite
Mm.
clever because obviously his whole thing was he's a risk taker and he's wisecracking. He's still risk taking and wisecracking, but he is a bit older. It is slightly tempered, which I
Yes.
thought it was quite. It felt like the same character but older, which I thought was good. Um, yeah,
You know what? Do you know what it reminded me of watching this? And I'm gonna have to Google the name of the actor now. But when I saw him as Serge, it just reminded me of like back in the day, they did some really shocking things in films that you think you could never get away with today. One of them was Serge. I think if they hadn't had him in the original films, I don't think we would have got him in this. I think they would have made it a very different kind of a character or a very effeminate, obviously gay man that wasn't like Serge,
I think they tried to. They in a way they offset it in this one with the Louis Guzman character,
Right.
who is kind of like the cartel boss, but he is singing. He's super camp, but a bit more self-aware, and it's
Yeah.
not like because I think at the time, and then he said the butt of the joke. That's not what I want to say. At the time, it was a bit like, oh, ha ha ha! Look at the gay man working in a shop. It
So
was a
this
bit.
this reminded me of Short Circuit from
Oh,
1986 with Fisher
oh,
Stevens
wow. Okay, that's much worse. Like it.
playing
Yeah,
Ben. Ben. Ben was an Indian character.
yeah,
Given that this was 1986 and we didn't have
yeah,
the internet or IMDb, I
yeah.
thought he was an
Me too.
Indian
Me too.
man.
I saw that in the cinema for my birthday, I think, and I was like, "Oh, this Indian actor's really good. I wonder what else he's been in." And then years later, I think I realised and was
Like
like,
many years later.
"Yeah," I was like, "Oh, that's not good."
And then we saw him in like Friends and like
Yeah.
that looks a bit like Ben from Short Circuit, except this guy's white and the other guy was Indian. Maybe he's just like, no, they just painted him brown for
Oh,
Short Circuit.
yeah.
Things like that in the 80s, you're like,
So if they do a Short Circuit
three.
3, I don't think his
I
character
don't
will
think
be in
Fisher
it.
Stevens is going to be in it. He wasn't the second one. He
No.
was like the lead in the second one.
Yeah, he was the lead in the second one. No Stephanie.
But anyway,
Yeah. So the second one in the cinema as well.
it's just like things like that. And you're like, can they get away with it these days? No. Serge was toned down
Or it was more. I think it wasn't. I think before he was a punchline.
Yeah.
Kind of, and it was like, Axel was acting like he was his. If I remember rightly, Axel was pretending to be his boyfriend and was ridiculously camp.
Yep.
From memory.
Yep.
He didn't do any of that, which is again a good thing. Times change.
Mm-hmm.
But I say the Louis Giesman character kind of was a different kind of. Yeah, I think it was. It was good to see him. Actually, he's always good. There was a little bit of casting in here, which I can't work out if it was a deliberate nod to Happy Gilmore, the Adam Sandler golf movie, or if it was just a coincidence.
Who was that?
So when they land the helicopter
Yep.
on the golf course,
Yes.
the guy who comes over and tells them off with the golfing guy is the golfing villain from Happy Gilmore. He's the professional golfer that Adam Sandler's character is up against for the whole film, and he's pretty much wearing the same clothes.
Maybe it is. Maybe
But
it's
I'm not
not.
sure why. Maybe this is in the Adam Sandler universe.
Sandlerverse, as we call it.
Yeah.
It's in the Sandlerverse. Yeah,
It's possible. I'm going to have to check Google to see if that was intentional or find an interview with Eddie Murphy or something.
Okay.
But that was a bit. I was like, oh. It's a coincidence. This guy just looks like a golfer and tends to get typecast as a golfer.
As golfers, you be a golfer in this film. Oh, again, all right.
And there were things in here. I was a bit like, oh, you're hanging off a lorry, you're driving things through traffic. There's a bit like, are you just doing the same scenes again? But they were different enough. I think it worked. I mean, they brought back all the music from the first. So the music was a really important thing about the first film. I can remember this. A friend in school did me a cassette, mate. Did a cassette for me on a double cassette player. On the one side of the C90 was the Ghostbusters soundtrack.
Amazing.
On the other side of the C90 was the Beverly Hills Cop soundtrack. I think possibly one of the songs bled over into the other side, so I had one song from Beverly Hills.
I miss mixtapes. They're not the same.
But like, it's literally someone in school did it. They drew. No, I think I drew the Ghostbusters logo on the inlay myself, and wrote Beverly Hills Cop on the side in like marker pen, and I was like, and then until it got chewed up at some point in a cassette player, because that eventually what would happen with the mixtape, it would get chewed up, and you try and tighten it back up with a pencil. And
I gotta say, mixtapes, are brilliant. Having playlists, not the same. Like, here's my playlist. It's like you didn't personalize it for an individual, you personalized it for a thing. It's not the same as spending hours creating a mixtape as opposed to 5 minutes doing a playlist. There you go.
You haven't had to press record and play. You haven't
had to stop it.
Try and stop it and rewind it ever so slightly. You haven't had to utilize. You haven't had to utilize the high-speed dubbing function at any point. So.
Anyone under 30 has no idea what we're talking about. But equally, why are you listening to us? So
yeah, this is a valid point. We do not have any relevant modern opinions.
We don't have anybody younger than 35 listening to us.
That's true.
We're talking demographics. But yeah, it's not the same. Oh, Chris, you touched on it. You mentioned Ghostbusters. I think Ghostbusters Afterlife proved to me, who was cynical about bringing franchises back, that it can work. I was really against it. I really didn't like it, especially after the absolute shitfest of the 2000 and whatever it was, all-female Ghostbusters, which is a remake of the first one in many places, scene for scene of the original.
Yeah,
I hated that one with a passion, and I thought, oh no, here we go. And then they did Afterlife, and they said we're bringing them back again, a new generation, and blah blah blah, and passing the torch. And I thought, I don't know, that turned me around that it can be done well, and it can be done with care for what has come before. This is not quite the same because it's still Eddie Murphy as Axel F in the lead, and they're bringing back Billy, and they're bringing back Taggart. They didn't really pass the torch either. It wasn't like, oh, the boyfriend and the daughter are going to take over now in the end of the film. It wasn't that kind of a film. No. They left the door open to do more if this one does well. And I'm like,
well, there's already been an update on that. So in the first 2 weeks, it got 63 million views on Netflix, which is the most watched film it's the most watched film this year on Netflix. And they already announced that a fourth film has been greenlit.
There you go. Okay.
So this will be the usual thing. Oh, that was really good, and it was nostalgic, and it works. And let's make another one. Oh, that's kind of good as well. And let's make 10 more, one every year until he does look old.
I think the next one will do okay, and then they'll probably do a third one, and it'll die a death, and then that will kill the franchise off for good. Unless they
the torch. The third Bad Boys, a lot of people didn't like. They still made a fourth one, and I think the
What was the
fourth one
third one?
is really
Remind me,
good.
what was the third one?
The third one is with how long ago was it?
Is that the fairly newish one?
Yeah, it's about 3-4 years ago.
Okay, so 4 has just come out.
Just come out this year.
Right, so I've not seen 4, so I have seen 3.
Okay, so
yes.
4 is the same directors as the third one.
With his spoilers, those who haven't seen it, with Thingy's son, who's the villain. Right, I enjoyed that. That was good.
Yeah. But the fourth one's better. It's that, but better, in my opinion.
Because Martin Lawrence, bless him, has had like some health issues and diabetes, and
he has
gained a lot of weight.
But they make that people. I know a lot of people I saw comments on the trailer, people like, "How are you going to explain he's got so fat?" And it's like, you horrible people, trolls. But they actually make a story point out of it, and it's very funny. It's very funny.
Because he has been really unwell in real life, and he has had lots of health struggles. So, and he is. When was the first Bad Boys at this point? 90s?
90s, yeah.
So it's 30 years on probably from the first one. Equally, if they did that in their 30s, they're all in their 50s and 60s now. So it's that thing again, you can't stop the clock if you bring these back.
Will Smith is older than Uncle Phil now, isn't he, by quite a way, from Fresh Prince, I believe.
Yeah.
It does happen. I mean, that's where Hollywood is like, oh, let's do deep fakes in AI, because eventually all the people you like will be dead, and we won't know what to do because we can't bring new things out and new people out. We just have to bring them all back, bring everyone back.
No, you have to get creative and actually come up with new shit. That's what we like.
Or just cast Robert Downey Jr. and everything.
Yeah, basically. Tropic Thunder 2, 3, 4, and 5, please. With just Robert Downey Jr. playing every single part.
It works. I think that could work.
Why not?
So the main thing this did was make me want to go back and watch the other 3.
The originals, yeah.
The first one I've seen quite a few times. The second and third one I've only seen once each. So as they are all on Netflix, which is how it works, we make a new one, then you go back and watch the old ones. That keep us watching.
Yeah.
I'm keen to go back, especially now that I know that it was different directors on each one. I think that's quite fascinating. Because I like Tony Scott as a director, and
rest in peace, Tony.
Indeed. I like John Landis, apart from apparently on this film. The first ones.
There again, it's our podcast. We can do whatever the hell we want. How do you feel about Gladiator 2? Talking about Scott, in this case, it's Ridley Scott coming back.
It is
30 years after.
He's doing I think it's interesting. So a lot of the kind of 90s directors that did like indie films are now the TV directors, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of the 80s and 90s directors who did the big films are a bit like, what do I do now? Like for James Cameron, you go, just wait, I'll bring out some avatars. Just wait.
I'm making the technology. I'm telling you something cool for 4 years. That takes time, please, people.
And then I guess if you're Ridley Scott, he's just gone back to each of his old projects kind of one by one, really. Well, not one by one, but he's
done a few Alien films.
He's gone back to Alien. It's I don't know if it's a sad indictment of the industry. It'd be nice if a script just landed on his desk that he thought was good. Having said that, he's done stuff with new properties they haven't done as well, and I think that's the thing. The trailer for it made me a bit. I love the original. I think that the original film is pretty perfect. It looks okay, but then I keep getting confused with whatever the Prime series is with Anthony Hopkins.
Those who are about to die. And so it's a bit, I don't know, it just feels like it's been a long time since the first one came out. It feels quite sort of CG crowd heavy, lots of the big epic shots that you're used to seeing in films now. I don't know, I don't know if it's too late. But we'll see. I'll watch it, but... they remade Ben-Hur.
Did they?
It sunk without a trace. It's like 2016. It came out and it just like sunk without a trace because it was so badly done. And I'm like, because you mentioned CGI. That's where they basically just like, we need 50,000 in the crowd, CGI. But when they made Ben-Hur, there was no CGI. They had 10,000 extras on a back lot somewhere it was like Kos or Crete or somewhere, like where they filmed it, and just like 10,000 physical people in the crowd. You cannot compare. I know CGI is great and it's, all the rest. 10,000 physical people, nightmare to control. Yes. Feeding them costumes, all the rest. It's not the same. It is not the same. So
I'm going to help if I have to just a slight caveat that I work in the visual effects as my day job. So I can't really be part of the, no CG crap.
It's not CG, but like,
I think there are certain types of shot that have been done. Like you get the same setup of an establishing shot from the same angle of a
Yeah.
different place, and that's why I think has become a bit of a problem. Is people are just doing the same kind of things with it. It's like anything else. It's a tool that a director can use
Mm.
how they want to, and the best work is invisible. The films you don't notice the effects
Yes.
are is because the effects are really, really good. Top Gun Maverick being an example. The biggest problem we've got is that Hollywood has decided people don't like CGI, so they tell all their actors to lie in interviews and say, yes, nothing was in it.
No,
Nothing was in it.
no.
Nothing was in it at all.
And then the
Or
interviews come out
everything.
and they look stupid because there's like 400 people listed in the credits as SFX editors, you know, and you're like, what were they doing? All of these people in the
So,
film.
I mean, I think there's an element of overuse in some things, and there's an element of some things just don't look great.
Yeah.
But my thing with my actual job is less is more. If you've got a smaller budget, do less VFX shots, not do more and try and stretch it and stretch it. So conversation for another day. But this film, there'll be stuff in there, definitely.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like it. It felt
No,
like
like a truck goes through a building, they'll have increased the explosion, they'll increase the shattering of the marble plaster so it looks like it scatters properly. They'll have accentuated what is already there because it wasn't big enough and they wanted it to look good. And that's fine because, you know, it's not that thing of, right, add another 1,000 people into the crowd and you're like, okay. And it's not, it's in this film, there was CGI. It wasn't visible. It didn't detract from the characters. It didn't detract from the story. And it didn't make me distracted from what was going on, that I was just watching the spectacle of it. That's the concern that I have, is where I'm just watching a bunch of CGI characters fight. And at that point, I have no interest because I don't care, because it's not real people. So I've stepped away from the film. Whereas with this, it was all real. It felt
it was
real stakes.
much more visceral, to the point that you're going, oh, it is an old school film, because
Yeah.
two people with handguns are running around 50 people with machine guns and managing to dodge the bullets by being quite quick on the feet, even though one of the men is in their 60s.
And once in their
And
70s.
it's that stuff that when you were a kid you didn't care. Like, it's like the A-Team. It's like,
Yeah.
well, the A-Team, the famous thing, of course, is the cars would have holes in the side of them before they've been shot at.
Yep. They
But
crash and people crawl out going, oh.
it's that thing of like, you didn't care because you suspended your disbelief.
Yep.
You just like, well, they're really good at what they do. They're the goodies. They'll be fine. Not like Tim Brooke Taylor.
No one knows. No one knows.
No one knows that. That's again another old reference. They're heroes. They are the
Yes.
heroes of the piece. So they're going to be okay. But that's all right. But it felt weird a little bit. I was like, oh, they're really getting shot at and nothing's happening, which wouldn't really happen in a modern film.
No.
I think because it's an 80s film that's been continued, you can kind of fall back into the old tropes, but in a good way. I don't think it,
Yeah. I liked the opening thing in was it ice hockey?
Yes.
I enjoyed that. That felt fun. That felt interesting. It showed you that Axel was smart. It showed you that he was clever. He was playing with humor by teasing the other guy who was playing up race, like kind of saying, what do you think I wouldn't like hockey? And he's like, oh no, I've done it. And so they were playing with your expectations. They're playing with some of the jokes. That at the beginning, I was like, okay, I like this. This feels old school, but it feels like it's been updated. They're poking fun at things. They're poking fun at the characters, all within the world they've created. And it felt really genuine.
And they did a clever thing. It was almost like, Axel hasn't changed, but the world has.
Yes.
So what he get away with then, he can't get these. Like, oh, it's fine. You'll just, don't worry about it. You'll get me off, won't you? He's like, no, I have to keep putting my neck on the line for you. And actually, I'm going to retire. I thought that was really clever.
That's what it cost me. Yeah.
What? Because I can't keep defending you. And it's like, oh,
yeah.
And so it was, no, I thought that was really clever.
It was that they've moved things on. Some of the dialogue between him and his daughter felt a little bit stilted. I think like they were trying to make it heartfelt, and it needed another polish. It just didn't quite feel right, and it wasn't the actor's fault. Like, we've seen this time and again. It's the script that needs work. Like, I've seen good actors get bad dialogue, and you sit there and you're going, oh, this is terrible, but they're actually good performers, and you're like, yeah, they got stuck with a funny script. And there were moments in this where I thought,
I didn't really believe that they were. It was a bit like, oh, I haven't seen you for years. Yeah, I really care about you. Yeah, but you haven't been here. You haven't been here. And then it just felt a bit like, I don't really see.
She was really good. Taylor Page.
She's really good.
Like I think Eddie's Axel F's Axel Foley's dialogue needed more work, but she really committed to it, and she
Yeah.
felt genuine, like her upset, her anger, her disappointment in her father. You felt that, and it felt really genuine. I think they needed a bit more chemistry on screen for it
Yeah.
to work
I
properly,
don't.
but
I never quite understood what his character's kind of thing was really, as to why didn't really buy
he
why he
picked the
had, you know,
job
son.
over the
Yeah.
family, and then
Which
I don't want to say it was a distraction from the story because it was an essential part of the plot for them as characters, but it felt like they dwelt on it in certain ways that maybe it would have been better in other scenes, or we should have had a scene with the ex-wife somewhere, or something that would have given you more emotional payoff, that you
yeah.
understood what was going on. But
I
I don't
think
know.
as well in the first film, in some ways, Axel had a little bit of an arc. He kind of learned to be a bit more responsible, while
Yeah,
at the same time, the other two guys learned to be a bit more, take more risks, and to be less uptight.
yeah,
But it's difficult. That's where, like, you know, the whole character story arcs is very hard to. That's the trouble in with sequels and franchising is we've talked about this before on another episode, but Marvel's done it very well because they did the arcs over like 20 films.
21 films. Yeah,
Uh, and that really worked. It's like, you know, end of Endgame,
the
you just like
payoff
random applause. Every
done.
character's had a character. But in most films, particularly back in the 80s when franchising wasn't really a thing,
No, not at
we've
all.
made a film. We've made a film. It started. He started in one, you know, it's the age old thing. He starts in one place, has to travel to somewhere else, meet some new people, and come back to the original place as a slightly changed person, you know, the typical hero's journey.
Journey. Yeah,
Then you do that, and they go, right, you're making another one. Okay, well, he's learned all the stuff now. So let's just do some fighting and running around. You know what I mean? It's like, or you have to reset it or bring in a new character to go through that. So I think in a way they were trying to give his daughter and maybe Gordon Lovett's character the arc
mm.
and a little bit him, but I don't really know what was changing. It was like, I really like my job. Oh, actually, no, I also like my daughter. That didn't really feel like a
Yeah.
real a real thing.
It needed, yeah, maybe in the next one that now we know we're going to get something. They need to do a bit more of the arc of you know, this was the basic premise was his daughter was in trouble. He came to LA to help her, and you know Billy was involved because Billy told him his daughter was in
Yeah.
trouble. That's why he came. So he did turn up for family, but
Yeah.
equally it's that thing of, you know, that there has to be more next time around. You know, it can't just be there's a crooked cop. It can't just be, you know, maybe they do need to get the writer back who did Bad Boys and who's done, because I know the basic premise. It's not a spoiler. It's in the trailer for the new Bad Boys film. Joey Pantz's character is in trouble. They have to go and help him and sort out, and they get in trouble themselves, and they're then blamed on the run. So these good, whoever wrote that and wrote this is good at familial tension and structure and issues to get characters involved without just killing someone off to make it a
Yeah.
revenge story. So
And
something else has to
yeah,
happen next time.
that in a way is what's missing from this franchise because Lethal Weapon did it very well. That they went
Oh, family was so good.
get to know his family, get to know
The first
Murtaugh's
Murtaugh's family,
family, and
first
then over
film.
time, as they get older, you'll understand the dynamic there.
Yeah.
I think, you know, in some ways, the Rocky films have done it, and the Creed
Yep.
films done it. It's like, let's expand these families.
Mm.
Bad Boys does it actually really well. The fourth one in particular brings a lot of threads through from the first films because it's like their young kids are now grown. Um, really clever. I won't spoil, but
Okay.
like, and they also solve the same problem of main characters getting a bit old, but there needs to be action scenes. They solve that really well.
Yeah.
Probably better than here. Here it's like people you've never met before. Let's find out. Let's retrospectively learn about their lives from the last 20, 30 years. I think
Mm.
had he had like an infant daughter in the third film, I don't think he did from
No, I
memory.
don't think
Um,
so.
then I don't know. You need some sort of connective tissue. And
Yeah.
maybe it's just a bigger, I guess it's a bigger gap between these films than the Bad Boys films or the Lethal Weapon films. And
Maybe in the next one, he's a granddad, and that's where it starts.
maybe
You know, he comes to LA because she's had a baby or whatever, and that it creates more family, it creates generations, it creates, I don't know, Billy's wedding to someone, I don't know, something.
it's interesting. What they've never done is flip it and have like the Beverly Hills people coming to sort it, to help him in Detroit. But it's too late now. The guys they'd never make it. They'd never make it that far. Like falling asleep on a Greyhound bus for 2 hours is not a
where
film, is
where are you? Alaska. Huh?
it? But you know that would have been the obvious thing to do with the second or third one was to flip it and to go.
Mm.
Beverly Hills Cop is actually you're coming to
It's
see
not
him.
Beverly
Right,
Hills.
yeah,
Ha ha ha.
yeah, and
But
the
it's a
fish
fish
out
out of
of the
water thing. It
fish
has
out of
to be.
water would become the other. Yeah, but the other fish would be in
Yeah,
other
it doesn't
water.
work. It has to be him. He has to be the odd fish because it's Eddie Murphy. He has to be the kind of,
True, I guess.
the
Yeah,
odd one out.
Crocodile Dundee had to go to America. It wouldn't have worked if he just stayed in the outback, right?
No, no. There again, he has to be fish out of water. It can't just be him
But
in
he
Australia.
took people back with him. He did take people back with him.
Briefly, yes, yes, I remember. She nearly got eaten by a crocodile. We saw her
True,
bottom. I remember.
true. Good memory. Good to know that there are two things to stick with you:
The crocodile and her bum.
crocodiles and cougars.
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
That's
I see you played knifey spoony before, mate.
they brought that back, didn't they, for a third film? I think many years later, and I don't remember anything about it. I think they did. I thought they did. Maybe they didn't. Maybe I've imagined it. Maybe I dreamt it. Maybe
They
I
did
just
do
wish they made it.
Paul Hogan in another film pretending that they were going to bring it back, talking about the third one.
Oh,
And the
maybe
guy
that's
was
why.
casting to be Crocodile Dundee's son, and he was like, no.
Maybe that's what happened.
And
Maybe
like John Cleese was the taxi driver, and he says, John, what happened to you? He goes, oh, well, I spent all my money on drugs and prostitutes and gambling. And he goes, I'm only joking. I never took drugs.
yeah. Okay.
So, and that was like a Paul Hogan film about.
They've actually made. Yeah, okay, that's the one. Yeah, from 2020 called The Very Excellent Mr. Dundee, which is him trying to become famous again. But they did make a third film in 2001, so 86 and 88, and they made Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles in 2001, which I've never seen.
No, well, it's only 23 years ago, Pete.
But don't say that. Make me feel old. Was it the second or the first? One of the Crocodile Dundees. Maybe it's the second one.
Yeah.
Like that. My cousin and his parents didn't have a video recorder yet. So the film came out on video and we went and rented it. And then their family came and sat in our living room with us. And we all as a family watched Crocodile Dundee 2 together. Because the first one had been on TV.
Was it good?
And that makes me sound like I'm 105. And then we sat around the campfire and we sang songs until the night while lighting candles and sending our
playing in the mud with sticks and hoops.
Sending our children up the chimney and getting back to the workhouse.
Back down the pit with you, lad.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anyway. Right. So, are we ready for some scores? If we can remember to do this.
I think so.
Shall I go first? Or do you want to go first?
Yes.
I knew you let me go first. Okay.
Ladies first.
Thank you. Okay. I was anxious. I was nervous about them bringing it back. I hoped they could recapture some of the magic that they did with the first two, and the third was all right. It did kill the franchise off for quite a while, so it tells you that it wasn't up to the first two, which were really darker and a bit more risky. This is tamer in a lot of ways. It is safer. There's far less lines that come out that make you go, oh, I don't know how they got away with that. They got away with it because they toned everything down. So that was fine. The violence and the action and all that kind of stuff was there, but there weren't as many one-liners. There wasn't as much like a dark undercurrent as you got in some of the other ones. The danger aspect from Axel wasn't there because they've made it more of a PG type film. I think the script was quite good. I think the action was good. I think the action scenes, particularly in the kind of the scene with the car where they're stuck in traffic, I really enjoyed that with him and his daughter and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I thought that was excellent. It was all right. It was better than I expected, but perhaps not as good as I hoped it would be. So I enjoyed it. And as we know, it's 1 to 5 bags, no half bags. 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. I am going to give it a solid 3 out of 5 bags.
Okay. So I enjoyed the vibe. I enjoyed the old school feel of it. The music from the original, the plot, the action, it all took me right back, basically. It made me feel like I was 10 again. It wasn't perfect. There were some bumpy bits along the way. But I think on the whole, it's weird. I think if this was a new film, I'd probably be giving it a 3 as well. If it was just a new thing I'd never heard of and it's the first one. But unfortunately, I'm falling into the nostalgia
You've got a
trap.
nostalgia bag that you're holding on to.
I think I am. I think I am. It probably is actually a half bag of nostalgia, but I like to round up, not round down, because you know me.
You're
You know me a
generous,
long
Pete.
time, Steve. I am an optimist.
You're
I am a glass half full kind of guy, and so on that basis, I'm going to give it 4 bags of action. One of those bags possibly isn't quite deserved, but like Eddie Murphy brings a bag to the table of his own. And I think for that alone, I'm going to give it 4. Although that probably means that in my mind, the latest Bad Boys is therefore a 5, which I'm not sure I feel quite comfortable with. But
well,
yes.
you put your flag in the ground. That's it now. There's no changing the
At the end of the
bags.
day, let's not get all Ebert about it. Let's just go, or Barry Norman. Let's just go, did I like it? Yes.
Yes.
Give it a
Yes.
high score.
Good.
That's
Excellent. Okay. So, dear viewers, dear viewer, and dear listener out there in the multiverse, I don't know, wherever you're listening to this, have you seen Beverly Hills Cop Axel? Have you seen the originals? What did you think? I'd say email us, but we don't check our email. Just post comments, post reviews, like this on wherever platform you've listened to it, or comment on the YouTube video and say that you liked the film, and let us know what you think about this and the rest of the Beverly Hills Cop films. But yeah, that's it for today. We'll be back at some point. I don't know when, but at some
I
point.
watched an old film last night and I thought it would have been a good one to do, but I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Go on.
3 Fugitives.
The three fugitives.
Yeah, Nick Nolte and Martin
Short and oh, hang on, it's a comedian from Fletch, isn't it?
No, it's not him. No, it's just those two. Those two. James Earl Jones is in it, and Alan Ruck is in it.
I've seen it. Yeah, it has been 30 years.
It's from 1989, but we watched it as a family last night because it was one of those. Oh, what do you mean you've never seen this film?
I've seen that. Yeah.
So that's. No,
I don't think they're going to be bringing back 48 Hours with Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy, though.
I don't think so.
I can barely understand him when he was in Warrior, and that was like 10 years ago. So
that's a good film, though.
It is, but yeah, Nick Nolte is Nick Nolte in that. Was like. True. But anyway, we've strayed again. We're going to go home now. So
that's what we do. No more tangents.
That's all for today, folks. Pete, wrap us up.
I can't remember what I was supposed to say. Thank you for listening and or watching, if indeed you still are and or aren't. Good night.
Good night from me. It's good night from him.
From him. That's your other podcast.
Oh yeah, forgot.
Thanks everyone.
Good night.
See you again, maybe.
You have been listening to Bags of Action. No bullshit. You'd better stick around for the next episode, because if you're lying, I'll be back.